And welcome back to the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I'm your host, Sean Meyers, here for the Raw Recap segment, in which we look back at what unfolded on Monday night on the flagship show of WWE, Monday Night Raw. And always a lot of anticipation for the Raw, and now the SmackDown after a pay-per-view, and this on the heels of Money in the Bank, what I thought was a very successful Money in the Bank pay-per-view. You could check out my review of that also on this week's edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. But wasted little time on Monday jumping into a pretty significant storyline as Alexa Bliss was out in the ring along with Kurt Angle and Ronda Rousey. So that trio out there to start off Monday Night Raw. No surprise it got heated with Alexa and Ronda. And this is where I think Alexa really excels. She's good in the ring, not great. She is great on the mic, playing her character. Just throws little jabs in there, verbal jabs, with anyone that she's in there with. And I thought she came across terrific in the things that she said that you could legitimately think, like, yeah, that's going to get Ronda pretty fired up. Ultimately, Ronda tried to collect herself, tried to resist the urge, but ultimately just could not avoid attacking Alexa Bliss. And just a few seconds after this photo here, she beat down Little Miss Bliss. And then it got real interesting because Kurt Angle, of course, in his role, tries to intervene, tries to hold Ronda back. Well, Ronda took it to Kurt Angle. She threw him, and then after she grabbed the briefcase that Alexa had, ended up beating up on both Alexa and Kurt Angle with it. Ultimately, in the process, took out a few officials as well. The real takeaway from this is Kurt Angle, shortly thereafter, made the decision, Ronda Rousey suspended 30 days. Now, it's pretty clear that this is much like when Brock Lesnar was suspended a few years back after he attacked the announcers and everyone else. This is just a way to write Ronda off of TV for the next month. Probably had other commitments. And I don't really like the idea that she's missing a month straight and they're using this excuse to cover for it, because I wanted her to be there week in and week out. I know you're not going to have her wrestle every week. You don't want to have her wrestle too much, but keep in mind, she debuted at the Royal Rumble. She's wrestled 2 matches since then, and we are now near the end of June. She's wrestled at WrestleMania in a tag match, and then, of course, against Nia Jax at Money in the Bank. I just don't think that she has to be a special attraction, but I think you need to use her a little bit more than what they have. You want to see her on TV, and at least every now and then, give her a match on Monday Night Raw. You don't just want to have her only wrestle at every other or every third pay-per-view. That's not enough for me. She'll start to get the same feeling as a Brock Lesnar. I mean, she challenged for the title in her first singles match. Yeah, you can understand it, but that's one way to turn some fans against her. So having her not on TV for the next month, yeah, they had to come up with an explanation for it, but I would much rather see her on TV regularly, and I don't know if there's maybe a limited number of dates or if she just has other obligations, but I would prefer if she would be able to be on TV every week. They had to write her off. This is how they went about it. It does, however, lead to something significant down the road. It seems as though, ultimately, what's going to happen is Ronda is going to get her hands on Alexa Bliss for the title. And I know that Nia Jax is first in line, being the former champion, to go against Bliss. We'll see how they handle that, because, again, keep in mind, they spent months and months trying to make Nia Jax a sympathetic figure who was bullied, made fun of for her weight. Alexa Bliss was really spearheading those insults. But when you see how they made Nia against Ronda Rousey, she kind of came across like a bully. So now you're going to have to try to figure out how to get the fans behind Nia once again, seemingly, as she pursues trying to get her title back with the rematch against Alexa. And then, if Nia's unable, or even if she theoretically does win the title from Alexa, when Ronda comes back in 30 days, you're looking then probably Ronda's going to be going after Bliss, and in all likelihood going after the title. So if that's the case, Ronda gets her next match seemingly once again for the championship, and you have to figure eventually she's going to win. So Might be a title reign beginning pretty soon for Ronda Rousey. We'll see how it goes, but at least we know for the next 30 days she's going to be off TV, so they can really focus in on the Nia-Alexa storyline and reigniting that after it seemingly came to an end just about a month ago. Also on Monday Night Raw, there was a title change, and it was a pretty significant one. And to me, kind of surprising with the timing, kind of surprising with who ultimately unseated Seth Rollins in his IC title reign. It was Dolph Ziggler. Yes, the same Dolph Ziggler that is currently in a tag team with Drew McIntyre. Ziggler came out and answered the open challenge that Rollins had posed a few times during his reign as Intercontinental Champion on Monday Night Raw. And it was a terrific match. Really, you would expect nothing less from these two with the role that Seth Rollins has been on and the ability of Dolph Ziggler, especially a motivated Dolph Ziggler. And I think he's been just that since he's been paired with McIntyre on Monday Night Raw. Great match. Pretty shocking to see that Seth Rollins loses the title in this open challenge, because keep in mind, a night before a huge Rising Star and Elias challenge, Rollins managed to retain against him. Then you have him drop the title on Raw, unadvertised match against a guy in Ziggler who's somewhat of a journeyman. But the bigger issue for me is Ziggler is in a tag team right now with McIntyre, and it seemed like they would be staying with the tag team route for at least the next couple of months. So does that maybe change that? Does Drew McIntyre sort of go to the bodyguard of now the IC champion Dolph Ziggler? Do you still have him work the tag teams? It'll be interesting to see how this unfolds. And it might all be for naught, because Seth Rollins has already stated he's going to be cashing in his rematch clause next week on Raw, so he'll get a chance to win it back from Dolph. But you get the feeling maybe that they did this for a reason, so that they could elevate Seth Rollins to that next level. And if I'm predicting, I'm thinking Ziggler finds a way to keep that title. Seth Rollins moves on potentially to the main event at Extreme Rules, the multi-man match to determine the number one contender. We already know Bobby Lashley's in. We know Roman Reigns is in. Looks like they'll probably pick 4 more guys to go into that match, and I think Rollins could be one of them. And if he gets in, might be the favorite. It's, a match that people have highlighted potentially at SummerSlam. Seth Rollins, Brock Lesnar. I would love to see it, and I would love to see Rollins win the Universal title, but I think this could be the first step in getting him to that level, because you're not probably traditionally going to have your IC champion challenge for the world title as well. Yeah, we've seen it on rare instances, but in this case, probably easier to have Rollins drop the title. My question again is, why do you give it to Ziggler instead of Elias? But maybe, brainstorming, maybe Elias also will ascend above the IC title, and bigger and better things for him as well. We'll have to wait and see. Again, Seth Rollins drops the IC title after a pretty impressive reign that started at WrestleMania. He gets his rematch. We'll see if he wins it back. But I would suspect that Dolph Ziggler is going to be a champion at least for the next couple of months. And then maybe you give it to another upstart that you want to elevate. But we'll see. Great match, and I would expect that they'll have another good one this upcoming Monday. The main event on Raw this past week was an interesting tag team match, as Constable Corbin kind of shifted from an in-ring competitor who really had nothing going on to a backstage authority figure, and he was in a lot of segments. He got the haircut, long overdue, going back and forth, sort of an antagonist to Kurt Angle. Well, he got a main event match on Monday Night Raw, tagging with Kevin Owens, who was battered the night before after the bump he took being thrown off the top of the ladder by Braun Strowman. So a very beaten up and bruised Kevin Owens teaming with Baron Corbin, and they went against Finn Balor and the aforementioned Braun Strowman. And surprisingly, it was Baron Corbin who got the victory in this match. You see the new look there with the vest, looking very professional and dapper in his new ring attire, as well as the new hairstyle that we mentioned that he showed off a couple weeks ago. He got the victory in this match against Finn Balor, and a little surprised that a team with Braun Strowman loses to Baron Corbin and Kevin Owens, but that's exactly what happens here. And when you think about what this means for Baron Corbin, You can't really, dismiss it as anything short of a big-time push for him. I didn't know how this role was ultimately going to turn out, Constable Corbin, but it looks like they have some big things planned for him, and you have to wonder if maybe he works his way into this number one contenders matchup coming in Extreme Rules. He certainly has, I guess, in terms of storyline sake, an argument for it, getting this victory in the main event against Finn Balor and to a lesser extent, Braun Strowman. So Baron Corbin, Constable Corbin, could be a guy on the rise on Monday nights. I think he's always had a lot of talent. I've liked a lot of his matches on SmackDown. Seemed to be something missing. Maybe they think they have it figured out now, a way to get him some good heat, give him a new personality and a built-in storyline that comes with being the authority figure on Monday Night Raw, and he goes back and forth with Kurt Angle. You could do a lot off of that. So it looks like Corbin could be in line to be one of the top heels in upcoming weeks and months on Monday Night Raw. Speaking of heels, there was a lot of speculation over the past several months that maybe finally Sasha Banks would turn heel by betraying her best friend Bayley. We thought we were going to see that back in February prior to WrestleMania. They short-circuited that one before it ever got started. Thought that WrestleMania would have been the right time to have these two finally go at it on the main roster. Didn't happen. They sort of reunited. They did the friends sometimes not on the same page thing. Well, it looks like finally for good, second time around, that these two are now in a storyline against one another, as Sasha and Bayley had a tag team match against the Riot Squad. They lost that match, some miscommunication, and then you see the stare down between the two afterwards. And then after the match ended, after that segment concluded, there was two backstage segments. The first one, Sasha and Bayley really brawling all out. The second one where Sasha was leaving, tried to get in the car. Bayley tried to stop her. Sasha says, "I'm leaving. I'm done with you." And that seemingly has set into motion a feud between Sasha and Bayley. One thing that is not particularly clear at this point is who is the face? Who is the heel? Because there wasn't necessarily just one turning on the other. It was those two kind of just going at each other. It's hard to imagine Bayley being a heel because we've never seen it. She's been the definition of a baby face, both in NXT and on Monday Night Raw since her call-up. She needs something, so I could see that being a fresh start for her. But I think you go with what's worked in the past and what worked tremendously in NXT. Sasha, a great heel down there. I think that's much more natural to her than a face. Bayley, of course, she's always been the face. Try to give her a sympathetic role. I think that's what we're going to see here, but on Monday at least, you can't really say that Sasha necessarily came across as the heel. Again, it was just frustrations boiling over with both of them. So they're going to start a storyline now. My concern is too little too late. I think fans would have really enjoyed this months ago. They missed the boat on it. Again, it should have happened leading up to WrestleMania, culminating with the match there. They really showed signs that they were going to do it and then seemingly reversed course. And now I think both of these women have sort of been on the back burner. Yes, Sasha was in the Money in the Bank ladder match just a week ago. Bayley was not. She has not been particularly successful in the past several months. She has seen her stock drop. And for a casual fan, why do you care about Bayley right now? She hasn't really done much in terms of showing that she can get it done in the ring. She's come up short in most of her big matches since she's been called up to the main roster. And Sasha's sort of following that as well. She won the title a number of times, but never really got over the hump. Every time she had a big pay-per-view match, whether she was challenging for the title or she was the champion, she came up short. So a case of two women who were terrific in NXT and booked beautifully down there. And I don't think you could say the same, at least recently on the main roster. Yes, they've both won the Raw Women's title, so they've had a modicum of success. But I think this could have been an all-time great women's storyline and feud. Doesn't seem like it's going to turn out like that. We'll have to wait and see how it unfolds. And you hope that, if nothing else, they at least have a great match. Because I think their match in NXT at TakeOver Brooklyn was the best women's match the company has ever produced. You hope that a lot of the fans remember that and rally behind this storyline, but I don't have as high aspirations as I would have had this happen months ago. So we'll have to wait and see over the next few weeks and months how exactly it unfolds in the build towards Extreme Rules, and then after that, of course, to SummerSlam. But those were the big takeaways from Monday night. I mentioned again, Bobby Lashley, Roman Reigns had an exchange. They ended up teaming up in a pretty entertaining segment. They've already solidified their spot in what seems to be the Raw main event for Extreme Rules to determine the number one contender to Brock Lesnar. We'll see possibly as early as this Monday, maybe who will be joining them in that match. But that's going to do it for the Raw recap. This segment for the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. We'll be back with the SmackDown summary. Stay tuned. It's all here on the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling.